Player of the season so far for me would have to be Fabianski. I think that he's done a tremendous job this season and has been pretty flawless in goal. And I think that's been more noticeable, unfortunately, since he was injured. It's nothing against Roberto, who I think has actually done his best in Fabianski's absence. But it can't be ignored that we haven't kept a clean sheet since he's been out. And I think it's more than just good goalkeeping. I think it's also that presence on the field, the way he sort of works with his defenders and really controls the back of the pitch. So I really hope he hurries back to full fitness soon, because he really has been a phenomenal part of our squad this year, and I think we really miss him at the moment.
Player of the season so far for me, I've got to say Haller. He's been really good. Could probably do a bit more, but that possibly could have something to do with the team that's around him. But he's been good. He's adapted quickly. He's scoring goals. He gets around the pitch. He helps, other players, but makes himself available for goals. I'm excited to see what he can do. So for me, definitely has to be Haller.
Player of the season so far for me has been Noble. For me, he has been a rock at the minute in games, and his captain role has definitely suited him so far this season. I didn't think he'd be at the form that he is this so far, and I mean he's done a lot for us. He's definitely kept us where we've needed to be, as well as kept control of situations and the game. And for me right now, he's been kind of like what we've needed, and I feel like if he wasn't played, he'd definitely be missed. So he's up there for me so far. My most improved would be Yarmolenko. Obviously he's come back from his injury, and I didn't have that much confidence that he'd be at the form that he is now. So he's literally come back and he's scoring goals, and he's playing so well from what I thought he would be, especially coming back from an injury and having to go back into everything so quickly. But he's definitely improved, and I think he's gained so much confidence, and fair play on him because he deserves it.
For the most improved player this season, you may at this point think that I can't see past the treatment room, but I actually think it's Antonio. I think it's a real shame he got injured when he did, because if you compare the Antonio that we saw this season in the opening few games compared to the Antonio of last season, it's like having had a new signing. I think he's come back from his previous injury with determination, drive, a real show of strength, and has been a really, really good improved player. And I'd actually go so far as to say that his injury sort of proves his improvement in a sense as well, because the last time he's had sort of a major injury, the comeback was sort of slow and quite labored, and I imagine very difficult for him. And it seems as if he's come into this injury with a tremendous change of attitude, and has actually, sort of set his own recovery targets, if I understand it correctly, and is way ahead of where he was expected to be, which is a real show of strength and actually a really good example for other players to look up to. So Mikel Antonio, most improved player this season.
Most improved player, a bit of a difficult one, but I would go with Ogbonna. Last season there was more than one person saying that he shouldn't be anywhere near the team and what was he doing, and I don't even know where to start with Ogbonna. But so far this season he's been pretty decent, so let's go with him. That's who I'd say for now.
My most player I'm disappointed in, it's a bit of a tricky one, because I feel like there's more than one player that's disappointed me, because it will depend on the game and what's going on who I would feel like they could have done a lot more than what I wanted them to. If I'm going to narrow it down to one, I'd probably say Anderson, only because I feel like he's done what he did last season and taking XO amount of games to be at the level that he can be. And I feel like maybe I'm just expecting him to be on form constantly every game, and when he's not, I'm a bit like, what are you playing at? But I mean, I'm not disregarding him saying that he's trash and he's awful, but I think he just needs to just keep being consistent. And it's like, how much have you got to do for him to be at that level?
Disappointing. I have been quite vocal in how I feel about Anderson, so it's probably going to be him for me. I just don't think he does enough. When he does play well, and when he is moving, and when he does intercept, and when he does make tackles and passes and all the things you'd expect from a £38 million striker, he's really good. But when he can't be bothered, he really just can't be bothered. And for me, that's not enough. There's no point spending all that money on a player that's going to be a bit part and show up for about 10 minutes a game, and fine, he puts in a really good cross every now and then, and that's great, but no, for me, he needs to do more, so he's still my bad book.
So when it comes to picking a player that I've been disappointed with this season, I actually feel quite, I don't know, guilty or unkind for saying this, but I think that perhaps I naively expected a little bit more from Pablo Fornals in his first season with us. I think that he had such a tremendous time playing in the Euros for Spain's under-21 team that I really expected him to be able to make more of an impact in the Premier League, and I think that was actually sort of possibly unfair of me. I think it just hasn't clicked yet for him. I think he's trying. I think he's trying really hard. He's certainly got the energy to do it, and I think he wants to learn. He wants to get it right, but something isn't clicking just yet, and I think he's just not where I hoped he would be at this point in the season. But I'm also open to the fact that he's young and he can only really get better. And the more game time he gets, the more confident he'll be. So I'm hoping that soon he'll start to live up to maybe what I'd hoped.
Thoughts on the season so far? Compared to last season, it's obviously like a Christmas miracle. Initially, on paper, it looks so much better. Obviously, we lost so many games to start last season. We were sort of rock bottom of the table, all looking gloom and doom. So I would say we are better. Still work to be done though, because I mean, overall, it's looking average-ish. I mean, it's better. It is better. But we're still losing games that we shouldn't be losing. We're still not performing properly, I think, a lot of the time. I'm still to be convinced.
When it comes to the season so far, I think that if at this time last year, after sort of losing 4 opening games, you had told me that in the next year that we'd have only lost 2 league games at this point, that we'd have gone unbeaten in 6, that we'd have kept as many clean sheets as we have, that we have one of the best away records in terms of not losing in the league. I'd have bit your arm off for that. I would have thought that was a tremendous success. So it's probably just actually a show of how far we've come, that I'm absolutely gutted we've lost to Palace and gone down to 8th, which is a really good sign that actually things are on track and we are probably having a pretty good season. I'm obviously disappointed by what happened against Manchester City, particularly now that we've seen 2 teams who I think are in sort of a kind way to them. I think that they're teams that maybe are in the mix with us on occasions, who aren't, a top 6 team, but who can put in some good performances. So it's tough to see that teams like that were able to beat City, whereas we just sort of got beaten so tremendously by them. But I'm also really proud of the squad too. I think we played extremely well against Man United. We got points out of games that I don't think we would have last year or perhaps the year before. The Bournemouth game. I know Villa wasn't in the league last year, but that's just the kind of game we would have thrown away. So there's definitely a lot of improvement. So I'm happier than I was last year. But I am grading us by a harder curve this year, so I am a bit disappointed that one bad game and we're down to 8th. But the season's not over yet, and I think there's good things to come for us.
So far, I feel like the season's going so-so. There are times where I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is it. This is like finally the West Ham that I've been buzzing for, when we're all on it like fire, and actually playing to what the potential that our team sheet shows. But then when you reflect on some previous performances, like when I went to the Palace game, I'm like, what the hell was going on? We shouldn't be like how we were playing. So I'm like optimistic, but I'm also not getting my hopes high because I know what we can be like. But I mean, we've only just, I still say it's only just started really, and there's a lot to go on, so fingers crossed.
It's a tough one this year, isn't it? Because there's so much potential, not just with our results, but with other teams' results. I mean, you wouldn't have expected West Ham and Crystal Palace to be battling out for a place in the top 6 at this point in the season, yet that's exactly what happens. When you've got a year when other teams are potentially having an off year, in a sense, in that Man United are struggling really. Tottenham have had some really surprising results not go their way, and you sort of hear these rumors about inconsistency and not a lack of cohesion and agreement in the sort of back room of these clubs and with the managerial staff. What we have to see that as is an opportunity to fill a space that could potentially be voided by one of those teams. However, we also have to be a bit better if we want to take those spots. We can't lose to teams that are close to us, like Crystal Palace. We've got to find that extra bit of us that grabs, yes, is a good result compared to previous years, but it's still not all 3 points, and we need to have that extra bit of something to grab 3 points instead of 1. Having said that, I think that I would be incredibly surprised if we finished outside of the top 10. And I think we have to be looking at somewhere between 8th and 6th at the moment, but that's largely also down to how well the other teams play. It's not completely in our hands this year, depending on who else is also ready to turn it up a notch. But I would really, really love to see us somewhere between 8th and 6th.
I still think we're looking mid-table. I'd like to think top 10. I'd like to think top 8. But to me, that's going to depend on how the rest of the season goes. Can we improve? Can we become more consistent? As for me, we are massively inconsistent a lot of the time. We can have an excellent game, the next game we just get played off the park. So it's massively inconsistent, does need to be improved. If we can get past that, and if things can start to improve, we have the team. It's a good team. It's a really good team. So we can easily push up and make top 6. Maybe, but I still stick with about top 8. Top 8 to top 10.
I'm not going to change my league prediction. I'm still somewhat adamant that we'll finish 6th. I don't know why. I shouldn't be this optimistic, but I am going to stay with my prediction that I made when we beat Watford at the end of last season. I just feel like if we get the right mindset, the right attitude, and we play to what our players can perform at, I reckon somehow, some way, we'll get 6th. But if you're going to be like Chelsea, be realistic, maybe 7th or 8th, but you never know. So far, this has been a very peculiar season, but we'll see what happens.